Hey juniors, today we're going to start talking about the intolerable acts. So in the top right hand corner of your notes page, go ahead and write the date, which is 8/7/2014, and the objective for today, which is the intolerable acts. As usual, feel free to pause the video at any moment to get the notes that you need. Our essential question for the day is, what are the intolerable acts? As usual, the essential question does need to be written in your notes, so feel free to pause the video and get the essential question written down. So let's go ahead and review. In the aftermath of the French and Indian War, the British officials looked for ways to tax colonists to pay for the massive debt that they had incurred. The Tea Act was passed to sell cheap tea from the East India Company to the colonists. But of course we recall that the tea had a tax on it, and the colonists were unhappy with the fact that they were being taxed without representation in the British Parliament. In response to the Tea Act, the colonists rebelled by dressing up as Native Americans and pouring the tea into the Boston Harbor. And of course we know that this event is known as the Boston Tea Party. So in the aftermath of the Boston Tea Party, Britain is extremely offended by it. Lord North, the Prime Minister of Britain, who's pictured here, looked for a way to punish the colonists. Britain is extremely concerned at this point because they recognize that their grip on the colonies is loosening very quickly. And they decided that they either needed to figure out a way to establish order or let the colonies go. But either way, Boston Harbor becomes the main symbol for the revolution movement in the colonies. So make sure you have this last bullet point, which you can see is bolded and underlined, copied down in your notes. So the way that Britain decided to reestablish control over the colonies was by passing what were known as the Intolerable Acts. Now, when Britain passed them, they referred to them as the Coercive Acts. However, since the colonists saw it as punishment, they renamed the acts the Intolerable Acts, and that is what they're known for. The Coercive Acts, or the Intolerable Acts, placed restrictions on the city of Boston to punish the colonists for the Boston Tea Party. So we know in the past, with all the acts that the British Parliament had been passing, they were trying to tax the colonists. That is not what was going on with the Intolerable Acts. The Intolerable Acts were a direct attempt to punish the city of Boston. And these are just some of the Intolerable Acts listed. So what are the Intolerable Acts? The first one, and the most important one, is that the Intolerable Acts closed Boston Harbor until the city paid for the ruined tea. The second one was that the Massachusetts Charter is canceled and the government decided when town meetings could be held. So Boston goes from a relatively free society to an occupied state with soldiers everywhere. The third one is that royal officials who commit crimes are sent to Britain to stand trial. And this is important because it becomes easier for British officials to commit crimes in the colonies and not serve a consequence since they're being tried in Britain. The fourth one is the new Quartering Act, which sent more soldiers to Boston to reestablish order. And of course, the colonists were expected to house and feed these soldiers. The fifth one was the Quebec Act, which gave tons of land to the city of Quebec. The sixth one, which is the last, but definitely not the least important, is that General Thomas Gage becomes the new governor of Massachusetts. And he will be very important in the coming weeks as we approach the battles of Lexington and Concord. As you can see, only 4 of the Intolerable Acts listed are bolded and underlined because those are the most important. So those are the ones that you need to have in your notes page. Feel free to pause the video to get those down. Okay, we're going to go ahead and watch a small clip on the Intolerable Acts.
The government quickly passed laws intended to punish the Massachusetts Bay Colony and to force its citizens into obedience. In America, these laws came to be known as the Intolerable Acts because they made living in Massachusetts extremely difficult. As a result of the Intolerable Acts, extra troops were sent to the colony to maintain order. Boston's harbor was shut down. Trade suffered badly. And the Massachusetts legislature was suspended, disrupting the colony's government. Immediately, committees of correspondence sent off letters. They warned of what might happen if Britain suspended other colonial legislatures, and suggested that representatives from every colony meet to find ways of resisting the Intolerable Acts.
Okay, that's enough of that. So, what did the British really want to happen? The British hoped that the coercive or the Intolerable Acts would bring structure back to the colonies. They hoped to reestablish a friendly relationship with the colonists while still making them pay their fair share of taxes that were owed to the British government. However, tensions increased in Boston and the rest of the colonies, and the colonists resented Britain even further, which was definitely the opposite of what Britain wanted to happen. So where does this leave us? The colonists and Britain are about to come to a boiling point. As we can see, they've pretty much drifted completely apart. And that means we are almost to the American Revolution. That's going to be it for Intro to New Material today, guys. Thanks for listening.